Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Creative Companion podcast. My name is Katrin, and let's create something together today. I've been wanting to get back into drawing this year, and I just haven't found the time to sit down and draw anything. So that's what I'm going to do today. I think I'm going to draw a picture of my baby. That may be kind of an insane thing to start with, but when it comes to drawing, of course, I'm going to be drawn towards something that inspires me a lot, and I spend all day with my child, so he certainly inspires me. I have one of my old sketchbooks here. This is a toned sketchbook, meaning that it has kind of a tan color to it. I really like this because then I can do both the light and dark values as I'm drawing. When I was in college, I absolutely fell in love with drawing in charcoal, mainly because it's just so freeing and it's very forgiving. You can erase really easily with charcoal. And after following a few creators over on TikTok, I decided to pick up some graphite powder. It's very similar to working with powdered charcoal. And it's just a really fun way to put down a base as you're getting started. Now I'm also going to use a palette knife that has a little sponge on the tip, and that's how I'm going to dip into this graphite powder and actually put it on the sketchbook itself. I also have a charcoal pencil, and this is a 4B soft charcoal pencil. I have a kneaded eraser and also a rubber eraser that has some sharper edges to it. A kneaded eraser is great for when you're not really sure what you're gonna erase. You can kind of wad it up into different shapes. It's almost like stiffer than bubble gum, but pretty close to that kind of texture. More rubbery than bubble gum, but you can mold it into whatever shape you want and do big sections that you erase or tiny details. And I love kneaded erasers when working in charcoal and graphite. And I also have some pens here that I'll do some finer detail work with. I have several Prismacolor sizes, and I also have one micron. This was just what I had laying here on my desk. So I may end up using some of those as well towards the end of my drawing today. And I also have, to do some of my highlights, a jelly roll pen, very similar to the gel pens that us 90s kids had when we were in elementary school and middle school. So as I draw today, I want to talk about something that has been a huge thing in my life over the last few years, and that is bringing joy back into creating. Now, you may be asking yourself, who doesn't love to create, right? Surely if you're pursuing any sort of creative endeavor, you love it in some form or capacity, right? And obviously I do. I, again, consider myself to be a creative person. I always kind of have been. But somewhere along the lines, creativity and creating as a hobby or specifically as a career, because I did opt for a more creative career path, somewhere along the lines, some of that joy kind of went out of it, unfortunately. And I think that happens to a lot of creative people. We want to pursue something creative for our main hobbies or for our career. We want to do something that we're passionate about. But sometimes that can mean that we're turning something that we love into work. And that can be a really hard transition to make. So over the last few years, I've put a huge amount of emphasis in my life on just creating for the simple joy and love of creating. And that means bringing in more hobbies and things like this that I do purely because I love it. Not because I'm trying to make money at it. Not because I'm trying to prove something to somebody, that I'm good at what I do. It's just for me. It's just for me to sit down and have a moment or two to myself, to think my own thoughts and to play and have fun and enjoy this creative process. Now, I am looking at a reference photo over here on my iPad, so if you see me glancing to the side, that's what I'm doing. I have this photo of him with his teddy bear from, I think maybe his 7-month-old photo shoot. So we'll see if we can kind of get some of the structure here. Baby proportions are so funny because, their heads are huge and their little arms and legs are so tiny in comparison to their body and head. If you're watching the video, you can see that with this charcoal powder, I can go in and start kind of getting the general shape and blocking in some of the darker values within this drawing. And things are still very free at this moment. So I can always go back in and remove things or adjust. I'm just kind of playing right now with how I think things should go. The focus is going to be, of course, on his face. So I want to keep that not too high up on the page. So if you are like me and you have found yourself, pursuing creative endeavors and you're starting to feel burnout or you're starting to not love it as much as you used to, this episode is definitely for you. My first piece of advice would be to take some time and analyze what it is that drew you to this creative endeavor in the first place. What makes you seek out creative expression? I'm a big believer in taking time to analyze how I'm feeling about things, why I feel the way that I do. I think that understanding ourselves on that level makes us better creatives and better artists. I think that understanding ourselves better helps us express better. Because if we are expressing big emotions or we're putting our heart and soul into something, that's coming from somewhere really important. And we have to understand where that's coming from, I think, in order to do more of it or to do it better. So where does this need come from, right? Is this something that we do as a coping mechanism? Is it something that challenges us, that we just really like the challenge of figuring something new and creative out and seeing if we can handle a new medium or something like that? Is it just something that comes really naturally, that it just seems like an innate part of us that we can't seem to stop, even when it starts to feel tedious or starts to bring on burnout? Maybe it's just something that even when we take a break, we just have this pull towards making something. Is it something that connects us to our community? I mean, I'm trying to build a community here of artists and like-minded people. So, maybe if you joined a drawing class or a painting class, maybe that has really become your community, or a knitting circle. I knitted in my last video, and a lot of you seem to resonate with knitting being your creative hobby as well. So take some time to analyze why creating matters so much to you and what is the most satisfying part. Is it the process? Is it the learning something new? Is it the challenging yourself? Is it the finished product and seeing something that you have made with your own two hands? For me, I think it's a little bit of both of those things I just said. I love a good puzzle. I love to challenge myself. I consider myself to be a very self-motivated person purely because I like to challenge myself so much. But at the same time, I work so much in a digital space that to sit down and do something like this, where I am creating something tangible and real that I can hold in my hands, I absolutely love that. There's something just so nice about holding something you've made, having it be a real thing that you can engage with. I'm afraid my drawing right now is kind of looking like some weird little goblin thing at the moment. But we're still in the beginning stages, so it will come together. I think getting back to why you love to create so much can help kind of recontextualize why you're showing up or why you started that business in the first place. It can be so easy to get kind of stuck in whatever task it is that you're doing or in the really challenging parts of whatever it is that you're working on. And it can be easy to forget why you started that business. I used to have here in my office a little placard that said, "Remember why you started." This was when I was experiencing a lot of burnout in my business. And, I started my business as a way of having a creative outlet in my work, which I felt like I really desperately wanted, and to also have some freedom in my career as well. I wanted to be able to make the choices like when I took vacation or when I had kids and not be held down to what a company or an employer would have to say. Now, with that, I gave up a lot of stability because being your own boss is challenging in and of itself. And that is a whole other topic that we could get into at a later date if you guys are interested. But I think getting back to why I wanted this career, why this was important to me, what I was working towards every day. Those things matter when you're trying to bring joy back into the creative process. And yeah, this was a very difficult image to choose. I'm now kind of regretting my decision. But like I said, I like to challenge myself. So, what better way to challenge myself than to literally put the burden of trying to draw a picture of my son while also recording a podcast. The next thing that can help a ton when bringing back joy into creating is just bringing back play. Even in a creative work environment, there has to be some amount of just playing and exploring, because just exploring with a medium or different ideas can really bring a lot of life back into what you're working on. It can feel very freeing, but it can also give you so many more ideas just from playing around, just trying stuff. This kind of goes along with my conversation on perfectionism, that when you hold this standard for yourself that you have to be like perfect at every little thing, you so quickly lose sight of just how much fun it is to just try things, Going into this drawing, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really have a set idea of how this is going to turn out. It may not even look like my son, and that's okay, Part of it is just to have fun. I haven't drawn anything in a while, and I've really wanted to, so here I am, playing, having fun, seeing how it turns out, because you won't know how things are going to turn out if you just sit there and wonder and you don't try. You have to try. And I'm realizing now that I kind of got his leg shapes all wrong. As I'm talking, see, I'm not getting things perfect, and that is totally, totally fine. This leg is a little bit more bent, and actually this one is a little bit more extended down. We may run out of room for it, but I think I have that knee cocked up a little too high, so let me bring that down. And this is why I love the kneaded eraser as well, because we can kind of get some texture back in that leg with the highlights and everything just by erasing little bits here and there. Now his little foot does extend kind of off the page. Both of them, I think, will end up extending off the page, and that's okay. Maybe we'll just leave where his feet are just a little bit rougher and not fill in as many details down there. Within this playing that I'm talking about, I think you should also allow yourself to explore hobbies or just other creative ideas that you're interested in without fear of judgment. I've told several people in my life that want to be creative and they just feel like they aren't, and they're really scared to try. I always tell them, no one has to see it. Nobody has to see it until you want them to see it. We all kind of have this idea, and I don't know if it's because of social media, that if we try anything that we're going to be judged for it, or that we have to show the world somehow, and that just couldn't be further from the truth. You can draw stuff, you can paint things, you can play instruments, you can write music, you can try different makeup looks, you can try different outfits. Like, you literally can do whatever you want, and nobody has to see it until you're ready for them to see it. Just play, just have fun, see what ideas you come up with, see what works, see what doesn't. It totally and completely does not matter. He also has his little teddy bear here kind of tucked up under his arm. So I'm going to see if I can bring in the teddy bear shape. I honestly think that one of the most refreshing things that you can do as a creative, or just to reinvigorate your creativity, is to just be silly. Like, have you ever played with a kid and just the imagination that they have? And it's purely because they're just being silly. They're not taking themselves too seriously. They're just having fun, seeing what ideas pop up in their brain, and that's what they go with. I think we could all take a lesson from that. I mean, I know I have definitely gone through periods in my life where I take myself way too seriously. And there's enough serious things in life. Your creative hobbies do not need to be that serious. Again, that goes hand in hand with the whole perfectionism argument, right? Like, we don't want to create anything that we wouldn't want our name attached to. But I say, create bad art. Write a really stupid, silly song. Write a really sappy, ridiculous poem. In some ways, that just gets it out of your system. I don't know if you've ever heard of the problem with like a blank sketchbook, but this is so common with artists that when you get a fresh sketchbook, the potential just seems infinite and you want to fill it with all of these masterpieces. But because of that, so many people have this fear associated with it that, oh my gosh, I can't draw on the first page because what if what I draw on the first page isn't great? And who cares? Again, nobody has to see it, right? I absolutely love the idea of artists that open up a sketchbook and just scribble on the first page. It gets it out of your system to do something silly and ridiculous and not really what you're intending to do in the long run anyway. And it breaks that barrier. It's almost like when you're first getting to know someone that you're really interested in and you're so scared to even hold their hand. But once that physical barrier has been broken and you've held their hand once and then you hold their hand again and you continue holding their hand, at some point that fear really starts to go away and you're not scared to reach out and hold their hand anymore. I think art and creative pursuits are very, very similar. Sometimes you just have to scribble on the first page or write a bad poem and get it out of your system to then free yourself up to create the thing that you actually want to create. I also think that if you are struggling with bringing joy back into your creative process, I think you should try something wildly outside of your comfort zone. If you have always done 2D art your whole life, try something 3D. If you've only ever done tangible art, try something digital. If you've only ever done digital art, try something tangible. Explore the possibilities that are out there and see what really sparks that energy again. You may find that trying something new and different again just brings a lot of ideas back into what you've been working on. Maybe you just need that time away from what you've been working on in order to come back to it with fresh eyes. You know, even doing this podcast is so different from the work that I typically do. And of course, I rarely allow myself time to really sit and pursue creative pursuits like this, like drawing. And it can feel so necessary because I'm getting to think other thoughts. I'm getting a break from the coding work that I do so often. It kind of feels like the same thing as, say, like going for a walk when you've been stuck inside. I can't tell you how many ideas I have for my business when I'm out for a walk every day. It's actually kind of shocking, but I feel like having creative hobbies or creative pursuits outside of your career or outside of what you typically work on can give you so many more ideas and just new perspective. You'll feel refreshed and re-energized to tackle whatever it is that you're working on. I have found so much over the last few years how much I needed tangible art back in my life. I spend so much of my day creating on a computer, staring at a computer, and I rarely get to hold the things that I work on. But that's why I have started knitting and crocheting, to see something come together and I can hold it and I can use it. It's a completely different feeling than creating something online and sharing it online, and it just lives in a digital space for forever. I also really love paper goods for that same reason. I used to print prints of my art. I haven't done that in a long time, but it just felt so good to like hold something that I had created. And I can't even really explain why that feels so necessary to me these days, but it really does. I also think that once you've had some time away from whatever it is that you're working on, whatever you're feeling stuck with, I think that pursuing other things for a bit, you will come back more energized for the thing that you have been working on. It can almost feel like a comfort to come back to what you're familiar with or revisit a problem or an idea or whatever it is that you've been working on. In a lot of ways, drawing is that kind of comfort for me. I obviously grew up drawing, just being a kid in art class. And so in a way, I find a lot of comfort and satisfaction in picking up a pencil and just seeing an idea come to life. I don't know about you, but hands are the bane of my existence. I cannot draw hands to save my life. I think it's also really important to examine what is kind of causing this breakdown of your joy when it comes to creating. Again, I'm a big believer in understanding where all of these things are coming from, because the only way that you can really tackle a problem is if you understand where it's starting, where it's coming from. Then you can understand how to fix it. Maybe analyzing your creative process, and maybe there's not enough wiggle room in it. Maybe there's not enough play. Maybe it's just too strict of a creative process to allow your creativity to really flow and blossom. Or maybe there's not enough discipline in your routine. Maybe you're just waiting for those moments of pure inspiration to strike, and it's just not happening for you. Maybe you need some sort of discipline or strategy going into it, or just some consistency in your creating in order to feel like you can really sit down and do what you want to do. Or maybe, and this was true for me, maybe you're just overworked. Maybe you are not including enough downtime in your day-to-day to allow yourself to create in the way that you want to create. It sounds kind of crazy because it's like, again, if you have a creative job, how do you have downtime? How do you have time away from creating while also making time for creative hobbies or other creative pursuits that are important to you? And like I've said, I think that those two things can go hand in hand when you are able to kind of mix and match the creative pursuits that you're working towards, and also allowing yourself that downtime away from the things that feel really intense or feel like you have to create for. Maybe you're not a creative business owner, but you do pursue creative hobbies and you're just feeling stuck with one of the things that you're working on. Or maybe that just, again, that inspiration hasn't really struck you like it used to. I think also recognizing that that's like a really normal thing, and that happens to everyone. Everyone, no matter who they are, experiences some of those kind of creative breakdowns, where they're struggling to make time for the things that they want to work on, or they're struggling to kind of get a handle on the creative hobbies or make time for the creative things that they're already pursuing. Maybe you're just struggling to make time for the things that have been really important to you in the past. Maybe you used to be in an environment, maybe that was in work or in school, that really fostered your creativity, and you don't have that anymore and you're missing that in your life. Whatever the case may be, I guarantee you there are other creatives that have experienced the same thing. I think it's super, super common to experience these things, to kind of go through periods of creative drought in a way. So if anything, take solace in knowing that you are not alone in that feeling. I don't think that as creatives we can expect the creative spark to strike all the time or to feel inspired all the time. There are things we can do to kind of nurture that creative spark and to find inspiration in different areas of our life that maybe we haven't been looking at. But to expect it just on and on and on, I don't think is realistic. And we have to allow ourselves that downtime to relax, think other thoughts, watch some trash reality television, go out to dinner with friends, figuring out how to turn that off so that then once you come back to it and you're ready to get into it, then you can put your full attention into it, let the creativity flow. It's like rest days as well with working out. I don't know why I haven't come to that conclusion before now, but any person that works out regularly or goes to the gym regularly will tell you that you absolutely need rest days within your routine. Your muscles will get fatigued. It will actually do damage to your body to work out on and on and on and to push it and push it and push it. I think creativity is very similar. Using creativity and using artistic skills or using just like your creative thought process is a skill. It is a muscle that until you've worked up to a point of using it continuously, it's gonna get fatigued. And you're gonna need breaks. Again, that's normal, that's to be expected, and you have to allow yourself that freedom. You have to allow yourself time away to think different thoughts and then come back full force once you've had that breath of fresh air, once you've had time away to think other thoughts. Now, I still think that I have not gotten his head shape right. I think I've made it a little too round. He does have really round cheeks, but I think that in all actuality, his head is much longer than that. So let me just measure here. I think it needs to come up a little bit higher so that it's not so squat and goblin-like. And again, baby proportions are so funny. When you're feeling overworked or just drained of creative energy, maybe you just need to ask yourself, is it just this current project? I feel like 9 times out of 10 for me, that's the case. Sometimes a project has just gone on too long. Sometimes I've just sat with it for too long and I feel tapped out from all of my ideas. I have nothing left to give. If that's the case for you, find something that you can just do really, really quickly, like this drawing. Find something that you can sit down and you can complete in an evening so that you can say you finished something. Really, it can just be as simple as that. Finding something that you can just crank out and be done with, that can be so refreshing, especially if you've been working on a project or working on an idea for months or sometimes years at a time. Some creative endeavors take a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're slowing down to the point of dreading actually getting into the creative work that used to really excite you, that's where the problem lies. That's when you've got to find something different, find a new way to express whatever it is you're trying to express, or just take a break for a little bit. My web design projects tend to take a few months, and that can feel really overwhelming sometimes, that I have kind of like a long slog ahead of me and a lot of work ahead of me. Again, that's why it's nice to sit down and just like work on a knitting project or work on a drawing, something that I can do really, really quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be worth showing anyone, but just something for me to do that I can look back and say, okay, something's finished. I have completed something with my time. I think as humans, we like to feel productive. And of course, our world right now makes us feel like we need to be productive all the time, which again is another episode for another time. But within all of this productivity mindset, sometimes it does just feel good to just finish something. I still really love going back in with this palette knife and darkening up some of these areas, adding some more shadows to things. I love the looseness that it adds to the overall drawing. It keeps me from getting too rigid or caught up with the details. I think removing some of the shadow under his eyes in this drawing helped tremendously. I feel like I'm channeling Bob Ross by like explaining as I'm drawing. Yeah, I definitely think removing some of those shadows helped quite a bit. Maybe there's a lesson in that, right? Removing things sometimes is what's necessary. Removing stressors in our life, removing things that we feel like we have to do or have to accomplish or have to be perfect at. Sometimes all you need is just a break. You know what? I think I'm going to leave the drawing there. Is it perfect? No. Does it look exactly like my baby? No, but that's okay. My goal today was just to sit down and draw something just for fun, and that's exactly what I did. If you're looking to bring the joy of creating back into your life, look for opportunities all throughout your day and your typical lifestyle, and where you can bring in true expression, or where are there areas where you could be expressing something differently. Look for opportunities at work or at home or in your hobbies or in your relationships. Look at your style, your decor. Look at the content that you're consuming and see if there is any room for a change up. Look for inspiration in places that you maybe haven't looked yet. At the end of the day, opening yourself back up to expression in a variety of forms, I think can do worlds of good for your mental health and your creative journey as a whole. Maybe I'll add in just a few more little strokes for his hair. that's slowly starting to come in on top of his head. Okay, again, I think I'm gonna leave the drawing there. I actually didn't touch my pens or the white gel pen today because I just decided to leave it all graphite and charcoal. I'd love to hear down in the comments what you worked on today while we sat and chatted, and thanks again for creating with me. I'll see you next week. Bye.